Welcome to the Wolverine Digest podcast, the best spot for objective and authentic coverage of Michigan athletics. If you want open dialogue, honest opinions, and in-depth coverage of the maize and blue, this is the podcast for you. And now, here's your host, Brandon Brown, joined as always by Chris Breiler.
I was going to start by saying go blue.
Mr. Breiler, looking like a distinguished gentleman, just ready to inform and educate. Hopefully he puts his microphone down before he starts to do any of those things. There we go.
I did take it off mute, though. I took it off mute.
That's strong. But with the for the people, speak to them about this glasses look, man. This new look Chris Breiler we have here.
I mean, this has been going back, I think even prior to, I remember back at when we were in Happy Valley, I was just getting bombarded with headaches. And then it continued. I remember the Big Ten championship game. Like, I remember you even leaned over to me and you were like, "Are you all right, bro?" And it was just these constant headaches. And I think it's, I look at this screen, I look at my phone screen, I'm typing stuff, I'm creating video content, whatever the case is. And I'm just constantly staring at these screens. And I think that was contributing to the headaches. So we've got some, we've got some Sherry
Smith needs to hit the bricks because that is not.
Boy, she is fine too, isn't she?
Well, I can find that picture for you if you want and send it to you. It's not a
I was getting headaches and now they've subsided since I've started wearing these glasses, and so we'll see. We'll roll with it for a little bit. But I do feel, I'll be honest, I feel a little bit smarter.
Well, it'll do that. I mean, I'm an everyday glasses wearer now, but I haven't had them for very long. I think I got them maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So most of my adult life, I haven't had them. But yeah, glasses will do something to you, man. And it starts to become like, if I take a picture and I don't have my glasses on, I feel like I look weird. I feel like that's kind of like my look now. If you notice something new about my appearance, I've got an awesome little setup of broken blood vessels right here. So this is funny. Chris, I didn't even tell you this story, I don't think. Yesterday, randomly watching basketball, just chilling, I started to have like a monstrous twitch. You just get like a twitch in your eyelid or your whatever. It was just twitching like nonstop for like a while, 30 minutes probably. And I just started like messing with it. I was like pushing on it and like squeezing it and trying to like get it to stop. And then I go upstairs to like get ready for bed, and I've got like a bruise on my face from I don't know.
What is happening? What's going on?
I don't know, man.
Look, is this the content that people come here for?
Yeah.
Your broken blood vessels and my bad eyesight?
Yep, it is. And that's where we're going to start, and we're going to jump right into it right there. You could call us a couple of TFGs real fast because I broke blood vessels in my own head, and now you're, I don't know, pulling a Harry Potter-like look, kind of, a little bit. They're pretty round frames.
I like the round. I tried to go with the square, and it conflicted with my head. My head is round. See that fits your face, but I don't know. I'm trying them out. We'll cycle through. We'll cycle through and see what works.
Should we both go with the glasses today?
Let's just do it. Let's just do it.
All right, there it is. TFG. Here we go.
You want to get started?
I'm going to go first, and
okay.
I don't know if we've done one like this before. So we've done. Hold on, I'm going to fix my glasses because they're not sitting right under my head.
We're already having glasses issues.
Yeah, I mean, We've definitely done like negative TFG, and that's where you're going to go. I know where you're going to go with yours. We'll get into that momentarily. And we've done like a good, like this guy. Like, can you believe this guy did this? This is amazing. I'm going to go in a slightly different direction and take it to like a funny, like this. You cannot believe this guy right now did this. You know who it is?
I have no idea.
It's Juwan Howard.
Okay.
How about Juwan Howard stepping out onto the court and scooping up a loose ball when it was live action still? I don't know if I've ever seen such a thing. Juwan, for a moment, thought he was just at an open gym or running a practice or something.
I mean, he's a ball player. He's a ball player.
He's a baller. Yeah, he's a former baller. He talks about all the time how competitive he is, and if he still had some eligibility left, he would get out there. But against Iowa, first of all, I thought it was a kick ball. So I'm wondering, I don't remember if anybody asked Juwan about it after the game. It would have been funny. Michigan obviously got a win, so that was big for the program. They needed that. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But it looked like it was a kick ball, which would have made it a dead ball. I almost wonder if that's kind of how it registered with Juwan. And then the ball comes rolling over to him, and the game is still going on. And he just steps out there and grabs it. And it was like, everybody's just kind of like, what the hell? And he throws it back in, and he's like, my bad, my bad. Everybody's kind of looking around and laughing. The camera was on Musa Diabate for a minute, by the way, who had an incredible game. 28 points for the freshman. We will talk about that a little bit more, but I just thought that was hilarious. I mean, I've been watching basketball my whole life. I don't know if I've ever seen a coach step out onto the floor and grab the ball while the game was still going on. It was quite a moment. He got issued a Class B technical foul, which isn't like a behavioral thing. It's more like a technicality, which luckily, man, because he got a pretty aggressive tech earlier in the game, he didn't get ejected because it was Class B. Still just a very strange moment, and I think everybody was just kind of laughing, and then Michigan wins the game, so it's all good and no harm done. But I don't know, dude. Have you ever seen that? Have you ever seen a coach step out and grab the ball while the game is still going on?
Not in real life. Like maybe in the movie where like things were going bad and you just wanted to take over and you're like, I can't take it anymore. I got to start putting points on the board. But I don't think I've ever seen that happen in real life. No. Momentary lapse of judgment. Momentary lapse of judgment.
Harmless, pretty funny. Juwan Howard, TFG. What are you doing, bro? Come on. All right. This one's pretty bad, but
well, I mean, it's bad. Okay, listen, it's bad. It's being talked about. I was actually going to go a different direction when we first started talking about this because Matt Stafford was going to be my TFG. And look, I'm not giving the guy. I'm not mad at him for what he did. For those of you who don't know, there was video footage that came out during the celebration. Matt Stafford was apparently on stage. There was a photographer within the vicinity. She fell off the stage right near where Matt Stafford was.
Like
right in front of him. He saw it clearly, and instead of helping her, he kind of said like, oh shit, turned his back and walked away. Hilarious video. A lot of people thought like, they felt bad for her, and it turns out, she I think broke her back in a couple places. Her equipment got damaged. So she became like this huge sympathetic figure, right? There was a GoFundMe page. People were trying to pay for her medical bills. I believe Matt Stafford and his wife offered to compensate and pay for the medical bills. And then today it comes out, they start pulling her old tweets. And look, we all say stupid shit from time to time. I've worked with Brandon now for over a year. We have said stupid things among ourselves, but you don't go ahead and tweet them out, and you certainly don't tweet out the kind of things she was tweeting out. And so I just think it's hilarious that she's gone from a virtual unknown to sympathetic figure to this pariah in like literally like 24 hours. Yeah, it's phenomenal. So
for those of you who
she's my TFG of the week.
For those of you who hadn't seen it, like racist stuff, really insensitive. I mean, we're talking about a long time ago. It doesn't matter though, dude. Like some of the stuff she said, you can't even harbor thoughts like that. You can't think that way about another person, let alone put them out on Twitter in public, regardless of how old you. I don't know how old this chick is. I mean, she looked pretty young, in the video footage and since I've seen photos of her afterwards, but you just can't do it. I mean,
this fucking guy.
Not that she's like deserving to fall off a stage and break her spine.
Well, I don't know. Right. After I read the fourth or fifth tweet, I was like, all right, that was probably
she had it coming. You're right though. I mean, she literally went from like nobody even has ever heard of this chick's name to, oh my God, she's about to get hit a payday with Matt Stafford and the Rams to screw this chick. I mean, like pretty much because she just put like really bad thoughts out there and is just not a good person.
Cancel. Done.
Not a good person. I mean, that's basically what it came down to. She's just not a good person. I mean, if you're putting stuff out there like that, I don't mess with you. You can't do it. But anyway, TFG.
This fucking guy.
Is she our first female TFG?
She might be. She won't be the last.
She will not be the last. But
Kelly Smiley.
Kelly Smiley is the
shame on you.
Name. Correct, Adam. You are right. Stafford had no idea about that at the time. Even then, it might not have been justified, but he was just like, whoop, and turned around. And like, that was it. It wasn't the best look. I mean, dude, I don't expect Stafford to go over there and like administer CPR, but he could have at least like looked over the edge and be like, oh my God, are you okay? If he had done that, there would be no talk about him at all.
I mean, but who among us hasn't been inebriated and seen something happen in front of us, and we're like, you know what? I can't deal with this right now.
I
don't hate him for it. I don't hate him for it.
I just don't. I just feel like you. I don't know. That feels like a pretty basic humanity level type of thing. Just a simple like, oh my God, are you all right? Like that's all it would have taken.
I think Stafford knew, kind of like how dogs can tell when people are bad people. I think Stafford's probably got a little bit of that in him too.
Matt Stafford,
Dog.
Matthew Stafford,
He's a dog.
he was pretty lit up. CJ, there's no doubt about it. His speech was like, "You guys feel pretty good out there." Pretty hammered, but still not the best look for old Staffy. But anyway, Chris, I'm trying to think, man. It's been a while since we've been on here. I was going to mention that one, off the top. It's all last week and 2 days this week we missed. So have we missed 5 installments in a row? Is that where we're at?
I think we have. I don't know what happened, but we were on a roll. I do know what happened. We'll probably talk about it a little bit later in the show, but we were on a roll and then we just got busy, man. And I think people, hopefully one of the things that people can appreciate us out there is like, even if you don't see the stories coming up, like we're trying not to bombard you with too much stuff if there isn't a lot going on. But if you don't see a lot, it doesn't mean, we're working behind the scenes to make some pretty cool things happen. And one of those things is going to happen over the next week. So
Chris,
what's that? What is it? What?
You're teasing it a little bit. Do you want to tease it a little more?
What else is there to tease? I mean, they know the interview's coming. They know,
I gotta try to massage the feet a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, we've my focus has been on, this interview with the 3 guys coming up this weekend with Donovan and Andrell and JJ. And I'm excited, man. A lot has happened since, we scheduled the interview originally with JJ, and then it sort of blossomed into having the 3 of these guys. And I'm just excited. Look, what I want this to be is I think when these guys get up in front of the press pool and you ask them questions, they're going to give you very basic answers just because it's an awkward format. I want to sit down with them and I just want to ask them questions that all of us are curious about, things you want to learn from their perspective. And I think it's going to be a really interesting sit down, and we'll get to see them do a little bit of a workout. So I think it's going to be cool, man. We might be popping in Sunday here and there to bring you a little bit of content.
It's probably got to happen, right? I mean, it's people. I'm excited, dude. I'm excited about it, and I mean, we're not putting too much out there yet, but it's coming together really well.
We've invested a lot into it. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
We've invested a lot.
It's gonna be a big deal. Something we haven't really done before. So we are excited about it. It's scheduled for Sunday, and then we'll have a bunch of content coming out from it after that. So really looking forward to that. And really good timing, too, because that's one of the things we're going to get into. Spring football apparently is starting like this week, right? I mean, The spring game is being scheduled, has been scheduled for April 2nd. It's pretty early. I saw somebody in the comments earlier saying they don't love how early that is. I mean, you're dealing with the weather a little bit coming out of late March. But we'll see what it ends up being, and we'll address that as it gets a little bit closer. But I wanted to start right there. Let's address a couple of these questions. Chris, you brought this to my attention. Have we been able to confirm this yet, that Mikey Sainristil still has switched to cornerback from wide receiver?
I believe it. I've seen it come through from a couple reliable sources. I think at this point you can say that there's the reporting is strong enough to where it looks like that's going to be the move. And if it is, I would be lying if I said I saw it coming. But I mean, it does make sense. Obviously, the wide receiver room is pretty loaded, and Michigan lost a lot in the secondary in terms of experience. And Mike Sainristil, he's an athletic guy. He spent a lot of time on the field, and if he can make that transition and help the guys out in the secondary, that's probably going to be his best bet to get on the field. I'm a little bit surprised by the move, but obviously they see something in him that leads them to believe he can fill a void there.
I remember when he was a recruit, and I thought he was going to be a corner. I thought he was going to be a corner because of his size, because of his quick twitch, and he's turned out to be a pretty good receiver. I mean, I don't think you can look at what he's done at wide receiver and be like, God, they're going to miss him there. And that's not a knock on him. It's just, he hasn't been like super, super productive. It's not like he scored 12 touchdowns last year as a wide receiver, and they've got Ronnie Bell coming back. And from, according to Jim Harbaugh, he spoke with John Jansen on the Michigan podcast. They're really impressed with their true freshman wide receivers that are coming in, Omarion Walker, Darius Clemens, and Tyler Morris. So they're, we'll see what that ends up looking like. If Sainristil can be a new version of Dax Hill, that's a guy that they didn't really have a spot for. I thought maybe it was Rod Moore, but maybe he's more of a traditional safety back there. You've got Brad Hawkins, you've got R.J. Moten. Brad Hawkins leaves. Maybe that's now Rod Moore. Maybe Sainer still can be the Daxton Hill guy. I don't know what their plan is for him, but I remember thinking when he came out as a recruit that cornerback might be his better upside. Yes, Austin Hall brings up Will Johnson. He's certainly going to have a look at getting on the field and being a potential starter. I think chances are pretty high that DJ Turner starts. I mean, he had a really strong year last year. So there's some depth there, but it's a lot of unproven depth. And so you just wonder, what that will end up looking like. But obviously, if they're moving a guy who has been moderately productive at wide receiver over to the defensive side, then they have a plan for him. You're not just going to take Mike Sainristil off of the offense when he made some plays last year and put him at DB to ride Pine and not ever contribute again. So I'm interested to see what that looks like. And that leads me into our next question, since we're going to start talking spring ball, which does kick off next week. And Chris, I'm blindsiding you a little bit here with this because we didn't really discuss it much getting started, but I'm confident in your knowledge, dude, that you can do it on the spot. Do you have 3 storylines that you think will dominate the airwaves coming out of spring ball and into fall camp? What are the 3 storylines surrounding Michigan football as we get ready to start spring ball, apparently on Monday? And then, we'll see what we see on April 2nd for the spring game. What are those 3 storylines that you're most intrigued by for the 2022 version of Michigan football?
Quarterback.
Wow. All right.
Well, so
obviously that's on the list. Yeah,
being facetious a little bit, but that's obviously going to dominate the offseason storyline is what's going to happen there. And I think the majority of Michigan fans kind of have a certain direction they think this should go, but I think there's another camp that makes a solid argument. And so it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But yeah, I mean, what they're going to do defensively and who's going to step up. And you're talking about guys like Mike Sainer still making the transition, to possibly help out with the secondary. That's going to be the big storyline. Mike McDonald gone, Chris Hinton gone, Dax Hill gone, Brad Hawkins gone, Aiden Hutchinson gone, David Ojabo gone. They're going to have to replace a lot there. And what that defense is going to look like, I think is going to be interesting. Outside of that, I mean, I don't know, quarterback, see maybe what they do with the offensive line and what kind of pieces settle in there. But really, to me, it's the quarterback and the defense here. They've got enough pieces coming back offensively to where I think that unit can be one of the top offensive units in the country, depending on what type of, scheme they choose to run. But yeah, quarterback, defense, and then from there, take your pick.
You know what? I think, in no disrespect to anybody who has another opinion, but I think it's no brainer. I think it's quarterback. I mean, these are big topics, but it's quarterback, defense, offense. You got a new DC, you got a new OC, you got new pieces. You might have a new quarterback starting there. I think it's going to be a pretty big difference from what we saw last year across the board. I know, hiring Jesse Minter and Harbaugh talked about this with John Jansen as well, that there's going to be some continuity there, that both guys spent some time with the Ravens, speaking of Minter and McDonald, so that the defense isn't going to change very much in terms of a scheme approach and a philosophy, but you've got brand new bodies in there. I mean, I told you to stop saying names because it's like, good God, they really are bringing in a ton of new faces that are going to have to replace a ton of production from last year, especially those edge rushers. I think if you're going to get specific, who was it right there? I see Austin put up edge rushers specifically. Yeah, dude, how do you replace 2 first potentially top 10 picks in Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo, who accounted for 25 or 26 sacks or whatever the number was? It's a ton to replace. But I really do think there's a lot of change. I mean, if you're going to have a brand new quarterback when the guy you just had is still on the roster and led you to a 12-2 season, and then you're suddenly going to switch to the young gunslinger and J.J. McCarthy, if that's what happens, and you've got new guys calling the plays, more cooks in the kitchen. Based on what we've heard, it's going to be some conglomerate of Sharon Moore, Mike Hart, Matt Weiss, Jim Harbaugh, and whoever else is involved in calling plays. And then on defense, you've got a brand new guy running the unit as well. And now Steve Klinkscale is also a co-defensive coordinator. You've got a lot of changes at the most important parts of a team. And so I'm truly curious to see how all of that comes together after a 2021 season where there were a million changes and moving parts and new guys doing new things, and we saw how that went. So it's
you know what the
difference not to be intrigued.
The difference, coming off of 2021 or coming off of 2020 was, look at the season they were coming off of 2-4. Everything went wrong. Like, I think there's a lot of moving pieces this time around, or a lot of new faces, or a lot of change that's going to happen. But they're just coming off of a season where the blueprint was laid. They've seen how to do this now. They know how to get to Indy. They've seen it happen. They watched a guy like Aiden Hutchinson go into the weight room and say, "Bring me out every day," and help make me into a champion. And so I know that they're going to have to replace a lot, but they know what it takes to get there. And I think that the core, the leadership that's still there, I'm confident that they can get there. But you're right. Storyline wise, there's a lot of faces, a lot of guys that are going to have to emerge and play big minutes that just haven't done so yet.
Yeah, I mean, and you give them the benefit of the doubt this year, whereas last year you couldn't. Right. You couldn't. I mean, it was silly too. That's why I was hitting you with the slurp noise when you were saying 9-3.
Right.
Everybody ended up being wrong, and everybody ended up being way under. And now this year you give them some of the benefit of the doubt because Jim Harbaugh did figure it out. He's back. The offense should be dynamic. The defense is talented but unproven. And so we'll see what it looks like. But
let me ask you this.
Totally different vibe. You're right.
We had, generally speaking, 10 or 11 wins heading into that final week in November, right?
For this year, you mean?
For this year, coming for 2022. Has anything that's happened, whether it be Gaddis leaving, McDonald leaving, some of the coaching changes, the roster changes, has anything that's happened over the last 30 days changed your opinion of what that record's going to look like? So that to me is like, that's indicative of, yes, they've got some names and some faces to replace, but ultimately, by and large, most people still see this as a 10-2, 11-1 team.
That's true. But for me, it's more about the opponents than it is Michigan. And I think that's fair. I think that's okay.
Yeah.
But I think the team is going to be good. I think the offense has the potential to be really freaking good, like elite, top 10 offense type of approach here. And the defense, if it's serviceable, will be fine. Will be good enough to, not lose games and let the offense win out, which is what football is now, man. It's got to be that way. And you just say thank you that the schedule laid itself out this way this year. That Michigan's going to start off 4-0 like with ease. And if they can get by Iowa in week 5, which, yes, that is a tough place to play, but they did beat them by 40 on a neutral field in the Big Ten championship game, and a brand new team. And, everything's different for both squads. I just think that the schedule lays itself out very nicely for a really, really strong start, regardless of who's playing quarterback, regardless of what the offense looks like, regardless of what the defense looks like. Michigan's going to be favored in all of those games. Up until that last one in Columbus, maybe they're going to be favored in the first 11. And so that's fortunate. That's best case scenario when you got a bunch of moving parts and you're trying to figure it out. And Michigan had a little bit of that this year too, or the last year too. We didn't know that. We didn't know that Washington was going to be kind of not much of a test. It turned out that they weren't very good at all. And so Michigan had, 4 or 5. You remember the discussions we were having. They're like, they don't even need to throw the ball. They're just running it all day and beating every team that they're playing. And it's not even a challenge. It's going to be some of that again this year to start. First 3 games, the non-conference schedule for sure. Those are going to be 60-0 type of blowouts.
Right.
Those first 3 games. And Maryland might not be much better. They beat them by, 40-some points, I think, in College Park last year.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be a really good start for Michigan. You're going to get some of those kinks worked out a little bit. You're going to figure out what your team is all about. How good is the offense? How good is the defense? Let some of those guys who are doing a job for the first time get it figured out against real competition, live bullets, whatever you want to say, and go from there. And that week 5 game, that's, when we started the season last year and we talked about week 2, that was all everybody was talking about and thinking about. And then it turned out to not be much of a challenge. I wouldn't be surprised if that Iowa game was kind of like that this year, but you seem a little bit more apprehensive to say that because of playing at Kinnick. I've gotten that vibe from you. The nighttime game at Kinnick, I think, scares you quite a bit. Is that accurate?
It's the same. To me, I view it as the same as going into Happy Valley for a whiteout game. it's just something happens at that place, particularly when a team like Michigan comes into town. I don't feel good about it. I think Iowa gets up for it. It's same thing when Michigan goes into East Lansing. Michigan State can be trash, but they're gonna get up to play the Wolverines. And so, yeah, I don't like anything about going to Kinnick.
We'll throw CJ's question up here real quick. It's kind of online with what we're talking about right now. And then we'll jump into the contract after this. I have 5 or 6 topics written down, Chris, and no real like specific questions necessarily, but I think stuff comes up. We'll just keep rolling through it. So I think this is a great question. CJ asks, with all the offseason changes that we just went through and Harbaugh flirting with the NFL, is Harbaugh under more pressure than ever this season? I don't think so. I think last year was far more pressure than this year. I don't think it's even close. I mean, he's playing with house money right now. He just won a Big Ten title. He smacked Ohio State, dominated Iowa. He's going to have a really good offense. He's going to have, some continuity and some really good young up-and-coming coaches, and he's got some new faces in there that I think people are pretty excited about. People like Mike Elston. I think for the most part, people like what they've heard about Jesse Minter. He's a little unproven in my book, but not any more unproven than Mike McDonald was. And we saw how that went, and they're cut from a similar cloth. Both came from the Ravens, both kind of talked about in the same way, real smart dudes, real organized guys, really scheme-driven guys, and that worked out awesomely with Mike McDonald. So where last year I had some question marks about the McDonald hire and what's that really, because of what he was, I find myself being a little bit more confident about Jesse Minter, even though they're different guys and he's going to do things in a different way. And he's certainly probably working with less talent. Than McDonald was. I still feel pretty good about that move. So I don't think so. I don't think he's under that much pressure this year at all. And again, the schedule too, he's going to be able to coast out to 4-0 with ease. Whereas last year you're like, oh brother, if they lose that second game to Washington at home, this thing could spiral in a hurry. And it wasn't even close to that. So I think last year was far more pressure. I don't know. Where do you fall on that? We're going into year 8, man. Year 8.
Yeah, I think he bought himself some time with the success that he had last year. And obviously, look, if Michigan struggles in 2022, his flirtation with the NFL is going to be brought up by those who were going to be pissed off at him for some other reason. It'll be used as ammunition. But I think, generally speaking, I don't think he enters this season under any pressure at all. I think they're the defending Big Ten champions. He's got a good offense, and I think that he's got some things to figure out defensively. But unless the wheels completely come off, like you said, Brandon, he's going to coast pretty easily to 6-0, 7-0. I mean, everybody's pretty much expecting this team to at least be another 10-win team. And so, no, I don't think he goes into this season with any more pressure. In fact, I think it's probably eased up quite a bit, when you look at what things looked like in 2020 and 2019 and 2018 and coming off of those, historic blowout losses to the Buckeyes in back-to-back years. It just, he's in a very cushy spot right now.
CJ, I think that's a completely fair assessment that since Jim Harbaugh did what he did and the way that he did it, he has burned up some of that equity. I mean, I think if he had tackled this thing and the NFL wasn't even part of the conversation, and you go through the whole month of December, the whole month of January, and you're just getting after it. And like he was getting after it, but he was also very clearly flirting with the NFL and by all accounts had 2 feet out the door, not just one. He was gone and it just didn't work out. And, by some 11th hour change, he's back at Michigan now. I don't think you're wrong in that, but I just don't feel like that's the same kind of pressure that there was last year at all. Or like Chris said, after getting your doors blown off by Ohio State a couple years in a row. And I don't know if I would say cushy, but it's close, dude. I mean, like he's in a great spot right now.
Show me another coach anywhere in the country in college football that has the kind of support system that Jim Harbaugh has here in Ann Arbor, even with his flirtation with the NFL. I could see it on social media. As soon as he came back, that same group welcomed him back with open arms, and it's business as usual. And I think the same people that were kind of on the fence about him still feel the same way. I don't know that his flirtation with the NFL changed anything in anybody's eyes. I think whatever you felt about him before, you generally think about him afterwards. Now, what I will say is, I know that it was said that this was a one-time deal and it's not going to happen again. And I do think that's going to be the case, but I don't think it's because Jim Harbaugh doesn't want it to happen. I just think if he didn't get an offer this time around, I can't imagine he's going to get an offer 3 years from now. And, is he going to continue the same success for the next 3 years? Is he going to go 3-0 against Ohio State? What's that record look like? I just think this was his best shot to do it.
I thought I had a picture of the contract details in front of me, but I do not. But I wanted
I think I do have it in front of me. So
I wanted to get into that with you, Chris. His base will pay him just a little bit over $7 million. And I think the biggest surprise in Jim Harbaugh's new contract that has now been made public is that there's still no buyout. To me, and I know like Ian Rappaport and I think maybe Colin Cowherd and some other, national voices have spoke out about this already. That does absolutely nothing for your confidence in believing what he said before about I'm not going to look at the NFL anymore. And I don't know if he is or isn't. And I'm with Chris. I don't know if his stock's going to get any higher. And if he didn't get a job offer this year from the jobs that were available, I don't know how one would ever come his way. But there's no buyout. I mean, $3 million is his buyout this year, and it goes down every year after that to where in the fourth year, I think it's gone. I think the buyout is completely gone after 4 years. And by then, he's either making a decision where, he's not coming back to Michigan or he's not getting a contract extension or there will be something that has to take place by year 4 anyway. So the buyout kind of becomes a moot point at that time. But the fact that it's only at $3 million out of the gate, it might as well be zero. I mean, like any NFL team that wants him is going to pay that and not even bat an eye. We're not talking about like a $25 million buyout like Jimbo Fisher. There's some coaches out there that have wild buyouts that basically make it impossible for them to get poached by an NFL team. And that Michigan doesn't have that with Jim Harbaugh. If he gets a job offer and he really wants to go back to the NFL, there's nothing contractually keeping him from doing that. And I think so now you're just at his word. Do you trust him? Do you believe him? Do you think the itch has been scratched? Do you think he's done flirting with the NFL? Or do you think that next year we're going to be doing all this stuff again when there's 5, 6, 7, 8 jobs open? Because there always is. That was the biggest thing. Like, I'm fine with paying him whatever. I knew he was going to get paid. He deserved to get paid. He wasn't going to be the 11th highest paid coach in the Big Ten after winning the Big Ten and going to the playoff. I'm not an avid Harbaugh guy, but he deserved to get more money, and that was going to come regardless. But that buyout or lack of a buyout was really surprising to me, given how all this crap just went in the month of January.
Yeah, I don't know. The thing is, and we said this when, it looked like he was going to come back, or then it looked like he was going to leave. And we talked about this leading up to that decision, that we have heard people say one thing and then go and do another thing the next day. And so you're talking about, he's saying that as of, February 12th or 10th or whatever day he said that. But you don't know what the picture is going to look like a year from now, too. Everything moves so quickly in this industry that I think he had no choice. He had to come out and say that. He had to come out and put, people's minds at ease. But the reality of the situation is, if you've learned anything over the last month or so, it's that this is a business, and that people that get so caught up in the emotion of that, somebody could never leave because of they went to school here and they played for this coach and they did that. First and foremost, it is a business. And I think if the right business opportunity comes along, whether that's next year, 2 years, 3 years from now, whatever that is, whether it's the NFL or something else, I think Jim Harbaugh will take it. I think that's the way things work.
So he would be 63 at the end of this contract extension that he just got now, another 5-year extension. He's 58 right now. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out. You've got that small buyout that gets smaller each year. You've got a base salary that's fine. It's not Mel Tucker money. It's not James Franklin money, but it's on par with Ryan Day. Puts him in that discussion of, the third or fourth highest paid coach in the Big Ten. And those are the only teams that he really is competing with in the Big Ten. So I'm fine with that number. You haven't beat Mel Tucker yet. So how about that? How about you do that? And then people can worry about what the money looks like, because I don't really think it's that big of a deal. Michigan State had to pay up to keep Mel Tucker, or else he was going to go somewhere else. That's what that was. Jim Harbaugh is not being courted by any other college teams. It was the NFL or bust, And when the NFL thing didn't happen, well, then you can pay him what you want because he's not going anywhere else. He's not. Right. I mean, Jim Harbaugh's not going to coach like LSU or something like that. It's going to be Michigan. Yeah, it's going to be Michigan or the NFL. So it's a different scenario. A lot of people wanted to get involved and say, well, the Mel Tucker thing, he's not making that much. Why would Michigan didn't have to. Michigan didn't have to pay him Mel Tucker money. And that's fine. I think Michigan State's happy with Mel Tucker. If I was a Michigan State fan, I would be very happy with Mel Tucker. And at the end of the day, Jim Harbaugh's 0-2 against the guy. So beat him first and then worry about that contract number. But it is going to be.
We're talking about $7 million here, so
he's fine.
He'll be all right.
He's doing all right, but it is going to be really interesting to see how that plays out over the next 3 to 4 when he's going to be, when year 4 rolls around. First of all, what's been happening on the field? Is he beating Ohio State? Is he beating Michigan State? Is he competitive with Ohio State? Does he make it back to Indy? Does he get back to the playoff? And then it comes down to his age. Is he still into it? Does he still want to be at Michigan? Are we going to re-up again and give him another 3 or 4?
I'm listening to you go through this, and I'm not even in the position to hire him, and it feels like it's just too much.
It's
just by that time. How long has he been out of the league? How old is it? Just,
I mean, are we looking at a Joe Pa thing here where he's coaching at Michigan until he's 72 years old or whatever the hell it might be? I don't know. And that's where it gets interesting because, the narrative has always been that Jim Harbaugh wears out his welcome. I think that's dead. I don't think he's wore out his welcome. He's about to go into year number 8 at Michigan. He hasn't wore out his welcome at all. This past year was a little annoying, a little frustrating, a little, redundant, covering the way we did in January. But it's that. Well, I don't know. Let me ask you that, Chris. And look, I've been as critical of Harbaugh as anybody in this market, in this Michigan market. I was very outward in saying I wanted him gone after 2020. I didn't mince my words. I didn't pull punches. But even I don't think that he's wore out his welcome. I think he's done a pretty good job overall. He did an outstanding job last year, and he's coming up on year number 8, man. I think this Jim Harbaugh wears out his welcome thing is dead. I think that's a dead story and a played out narrative that's actually not true anymore.
I think, no matter – unless you are lucky enough to find one of those rare unicorn head coaches, you're always going to have a coach that's going to rub you the wrong way after a while. You're not going to like, the way they do certain things. But, by and large, like I said before, he has the type of support system in Ann Arbor that few coaches have around the country, whether it's at the professional level, collegiate level, high school. I mean, there is a group of people in the town of Ann Arbor that want him there for life, regardless of what happens. And so has he worn out his welcome? No. I mean, I think people, generally speaking, I think your average fan was probably frustrated by the whole, is he going to stay? Is he going to go thing? But now that that's over, people have short memories. And as soon as, spring ball gets underway and fans are back in the big house and you kind of get that sense that, football's not that far away again, I think people are just going to be quick to forget and it's going to be business as usual. And that's usually how things go.
Wins have a way of making you feel pretty good about a lot of things. And so I think Michigan's going to win a lot in 2022, but that's why you play them, because I didn't think they were going to win all that many in 2021, and look what happened. So that's what makes this whole thing a blast. And there are a lot of moving parts. I mean, you can't deny that there's a lot of changes going on with Michigan's personnel and on the staff. And I wanted to get into that next, Chris, the staff, because I don't think we've even broken that down yet. Now that it's settled, we put some stories out about it. You and I have talked about it, but we haven't gone on the live or the podcast to break it down yet. So I'm going to go guy by guy here where there was a change. Anybody who's doing the same thing, I'm not going to bring up. But honestly, is there anybody doing the same thing? Like maybe one guy?
Musical chairs, right?
We'll go quick with a couple of these. There'll need to be a deeper discussion on a few, but Steve Clinkscale, same thing. Coach the cornerbacks, but he's now co-DC. Thoughts?
Glad that he remained on as part of the staff. I think he's one of those guys that has a big presence in the locker room.
Uncle Stevie, bro. Uncle Steve, man. He just comes off as the coolest dude in the room. We've talked about that before. Ton of experience. Was going to be named co-DC if X, Y, and Z happened with his DBs, and those things happened. Plus, Mike McDonald leaving, it was natural. You bump him up, you give him a little promotion, let him be a little bit more involved. I think that was a great look on all fronts. Jesse Minter, this is the big one. I think this is the one that a lot of people are pretty curious about. Still, was at Vanderbilt last year. Vanderbilt's awful. I mean, the doormat of the SEC. So I don't even know how much you can really look at what he did there. They don't recruit the same as Michigan. They play against different levels of competition based on the talent that they have. What he did at Vanderbilt's not going to have anything to do with what he does at Michigan. So this one's really tough, but young dude, been in the NFL, and other Ravens. I don't want to call him a cast off, but like, it is funny that Jim Harbaugh like needs a coach, go to the Ravens and get another guy. Worked out amazing with Mike McDonald. We'll see with Jesse Minter. I mean, what do you think on the surface here based on the little bit that we do know about this guy so far?
Ideally, you would have liked to have kept Mike McDonald, but since that's not happening, I think he kind of went in the similar direction where you get a young guy who's probably going to resonate with the players a little bit better. And he's an unknown commodity, but we saw it happen last year with Mike McDonald. It worked out pretty well. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I've heard is the goal is going to be to keep a lot of the terminology the same. A lot of what Mike McDonald did in 2021, the plan is to continue doing that into 2022. So I don't think in terms of like scheme or terminology, things are going to change all that much. That does make me feel a little bit better. The fact that he's, part of that Baltimore Raven network, that makes me feel a little bit better. The name of the game is continuity. And I think by bringing a guy like from the outside in like this, it's pretty much like you just plucked one of your brother's guys, right? Part of the family. So that's how I look at it.
Yeah. And to Dwayne's point, he was a Broyles Award finalist in the past. So, I mean, like, he's done some good things in college. You just wonder if it's going to work out the same way as it did with McDonald, and obviously replacing a ton of talent that's the bigger issue. You've got a new guy now trying to recreate a defense that lost a ton of talent. That's going to be hard for anybody to do.
You know what another part of it is? And it's weird. I think it speaks to like an internal conflict or struggle that I go with. And you can probably relate to this, but like I saw his picture and I'm like, this guy 12? Like he looks really young, but it's like, we're not spring chickens anymore.
Nah.
Like at some point, the coaching staff is going to be younger than we are, right? That's inevitable.
We're there, bro. There's
So
like 7 NFL coaches younger than me. It's crazy.
Yeah, I'm having trouble making that. I always think like you got to bring somebody on that's, and they got the mustache and like they look like Don Brown essentially. Pissed off.
I hear you. A move that I love, a move that I personally love. I think he is a star in the coaching profession. I think he will be a head coach and a great one at some point. Sharon Moore is now the lead offensive coordinator. It is going to be a group effort between Moore, Matt Weiss, Mike Hart, and Harbaugh himself. But I say the more responsibility and the more jobs you can give to Sharon Moore, the better. I think I think he's awesome. I think he's a star. I think he's going to do really good things there. He's got a pretty full plate. He's coaching the O-line and the whole offense and calling plays. That could be a lot, but I think if a dude can handle it, it's him. I love the guy.
Yeah, I mean, outside of Jay Harbaugh, we talked about this the other day. I think he's the longest tenured coach as part of Jim Harbaugh's staff there, and he's been working his way up. And again, he's another guy that the players seem to love him, and he did a hell of a job with top offensive line in the country last year. And so everything he's had his hand on at the University of Michigan seems to get better as a result of his involvement. So having him more involved in the offense, I think is only going to spell good things. And what I'm really interested to see, and even talk to the guys about this weekend, is, what will a Michigan offense look like under, now that Josh Gaddis is not in the picture? What can we expect from this Michigan offense? Is it the ground and pound philosophy? Is that there? Or, do you see things being opened up a little bit? And to not use the weapons, I think, would be a travesty.
Yeah. Well, it's going to depend on who that QB is. And that's, I wonder, just as you were going through that question, I'm like, how is JJ going to answer that? Because he's seasoned, dude. He knows how to answer questions and what to say and what not to say. And without saying like, oh, I'm the starter. Like, I wonder how he's really going to be able to answer that question, but be interesting to see. Matt Weiss is now co-offensive coordinator along with Sharon Moore, still coaching the quarterbacks. I feel like people might have a little mixed opinion on Matt Weiss these days, since he was trying to get Jim Harbaugh hired in the NFL. According to reports, he's locked in a room and putting together a presentation with Harbaugh, making sure he doesn't sound like an idiot out there. But it didn't work out. Harbaugh's back. Matt Weiss promoted. And so, yeah, thoughts on Matt Weiss being involved. I mean, by all accounts, JJ himself said that genius is not a strong enough word for this guy. He's a smart dude, analytics background. I mean, if somebody's going to know what kind of plays to call and when to call him, he sounds like the kind of guy. But I don't know. Personal opinion on how that played out, and then also, just objectively looking at him as a coach.
I mean, I think dude was just trying to be a team player, help the guy out. He was going for a job. And I think, we had heard some things about what Jim was trying to do internally in terms of making sure that, other people were sort of taking care of themselves. I don't want to go into that, what that situation was. What I will say about Matt Weiss is that you're right. I was going to reference what JJ said. It seems to be that, his knowledge of the game is, is impressive, and the guys seem to really take to him. I know that JJ seems to like working with him. And again, he's another one of those guys that if having his hand in this offense means it gets opened up a little bit and you use some more of that firepower, it's only going to spell good things. And you're going to learn a lot about the offense next year in terms of, what Josh Gaddis was doing, what those plays calls looked like based on what this offense is going to look like the upcoming season. It's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, and the final piece of that offensive play calling conglomerate, Mike Hart, still coaching up the running backs, going to be more involved in the run game. Probably is going to be Sharon Moore's right-hand man. When you're talking about the O-line coach and the OC, and then the running backs coach and the running game coordinator, they're going to be two peas in a pod, and I think that's great. I think Mike Hart is a hard ass. I don't see him smile all that much, and I'm fine with that. I like that he wants the most out of his running backs. I like that he coached up a guy like Hassan Haskins to be an animal and go break that touchdown record. And now he's got two absolute studs to work with in Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards. I think he's going to do really good things. I would like to see Mike Hart strike gold a little bit bigger on the recruiting trail, but I think as an in-the-room coach, a game day coach, he's about as good as you can ask for at that position.
Yeah, and you're like not the most approachable guy in the world.
No,
we've seen him out at – I mean, he always just looks like he's pissed off. But to be honest, I like having guys like that on the sideline, the general, the field general type guy. And I think that running back room, although they are extremely talented, is significantly better off by having Mike Hart as part of the process. And so, yeah, man, the fact that they were able to keep him on and then shuffling around some of these other pieces – from an offensive standpoint, I'm not worried at all. I'm excited to see what this is. I'm just hoping they use it to the full potential, but I'm not concerned about a lack of weapons at all.
And a couple newbies on the offensive side of the ball. We'll start with Ron Bellamy first because he was on staff last year coaching the safeties, but now he's moved over to wide receiver. I think that is the most no-brainer, smartest move that just needed to happen. It was just a matter of time. He was hired initially to coach the wide receivers, and then like literally days into his hiring, oh, never mind, just skirt. You're gonna coach safeties, and it's like, all right. He's been a head coach at a big time high school program. He played at the highest level. He had a cup of coffee in the NFL. He can go figure it out and coach safeties, but moving him back to receiver, to recruit that position, to be in charge of that room, to have those guys that he has. I mean, that it couldn't have gone any better to move Ron Bellamy back to receivers.
Yeah, and he's another, big culture guy, another guy that the players seem to love, and one of the guys that you definitely wanted to see hold on to. And I think he's got a bright future as well. He's a guy that I hope stays on the staff for a while and continues to work his way up through, similar to what you've seen from Sharon Moore. So, again, man, offensively, love what they have.
And then finally, I think this is another move that you're going to look back on and say, like, damn, Jim Harbaugh really did a freaking awesome job there by bringing him onto the staff. Grant Newsome to coach the tight ends, former offensive lineman, played as a true freshman at left tackle, would be in the NFL if not for a horrible, horrible leg injury that he almost lost his freaking leg. It was that bad. I remember covering Grant Newsome when he was a recruit, so I talked to him on the phone. 17, 18 years old. I remember having this exact thought when I got off the phone with him. I was like, click. Well, that kid's smarter than I am. He's like 17. And I just left the conversation thinking this dude is mature beyond his years. He knows things that I didn't dream about knowing when I was 17, 18 years old. The way he handled himself on the recruiting trail, he stepped right in and was athletic enough, big enough, strong enough, smart enough to play left tackle out of the gate. And everything I've ever heard about this guy is that he, if he wanted to run for office, he'd win. If he wanted to be a head coach someday, he'd be there. If he wanted to be the best teacher in the country in a classroom, he could do that. If he wanted to be an engineer and design something that we would all use someday, he could do that. This dude's special. He's special from a mentality standpoint, from an intelligence standpoint, and unfortunately, because of the injury, he doesn't have a ton of playing experience, but he has some. So he's going to relate to the guys. And I think this is going to be really good for the tight ends when it comes to them blocking along with the offensive line. So you've got a former offensive lineman in Sharon Moore coaching the O-line, running the offense, a former offensive lineman coaching the tight ends and getting those guys ready. I think he's a star, man. I think he's another star on this staff. I think Michigan's got a few of them. He's one of them. He's the shit, dude. This is a great move by Jim Harbaugh.
Malachi calling you out for slurping.
Hey,
calling you. Listen, I think obviously it's a good move by Jim Harbaugh, and you could see that when it was announced. If you follow the players on social media, like the guys were just rushing to social media to congratulate Grant Newsome. So, they made a concerted effort, I think, internally to change the culture coming off of that awful 2020 season. And I think Newsome is just a continuation of that. And I think he's going to be great for the locker room. And he's going to be great for the tight ends. I'm excited to see. He's another guy that I hope to see stay with that program for a little while and work his way through.
We won't spend much time here because is maybe the only non-change on the whole staff. I think he is. George Hilo, I guess he's on the staff. I don't know. I say that like tongue in cheek, but he's still the one guy that I just don't know that much about. I mean, I guess he's done a good job. Linebackers were a little last year, but some of that was limited by athleticism. Josh Ross had a couple bad looks. Junior Colson obviously came along, really got some recognition as a true freshman. From everything I've heard about George Hilo, he's good on the recruiting trail. He's got good energy, smart guy, knows his stuff, but for whatever reason, he's just one guy on this whole list that I don't have a ton of of my own personal background knowledge to speak on, but he's in the same spot. He's on that defense. He'll help. I'm sure he'll have a little bit more responsibility this year because Mike McDonald was a linebackers guy. So I would assume that Hilo's job responsibilities might increase a little bit, but I guess it's fine. I don't know. Am I weird for having that thought? I just don't know. I don't have a whole lot to say about him.
No, he's a very under the radar guy, and I think maybe that plays in his favor. The fact that he isn't a name that we're talking about a lot. You're right. I think the linebackers, they didn't blow anybody away, but they weren't awful either. I think he did his job and did it well, and hope to see some improvement at that position, obviously in 2022. But again, continuity is the name of the game, and that's a similar face, and the more of those you can keep around, the better.
Well, Jay Harbaugh moves over to safeties. He's been all over the place, man. He's coached tight ends. He's coached running backs. Now he's coaching the safeties. He's done a really, really good job with special teams. That's been an area of strength for Michigan for a couple years now. He used to coach that with Chris Partridge. Now it's his unit by himself. Fine with it. Jay Harbaugh's a smart guy. He's been around football his whole life. Obviously, he's got the Harbaugh name. He's not going anywhere until Jim does. I mean, that's. I feel like that's a pretty safe bet. I think he'll do fine. I think he'll do fine back there.
Yeah, same. And you're right. Special teams has been, a strength for this team. And he's, along with Sharon Moore, he's been there, longer than anybody along there with his dad, Jim. And I think, that he's a good guy. The players like him, and I'm happy to see him get an opportunity to do it.
And last but certainly not least, I'm going to let you speak on him first, Chris, because I remember you came away when we talked to Brian Driscoll from the Notre Dame site when Michigan hired Mike Elston. I think you had a not really too different of an opinion than me, but I feel like I'm going to let you explain it. So Mike Elston comes from Notre Dame. He's the D-line coach. He's also the recruiting coordinator, which he's done before. Just a really, really organized guy, really good at the recruiting side of things. And he's going to take over that D-line unit from Sean Nua. What were your thoughts when we came away from speaking with Brian, and has anything changed there? What are you thinking? I think most people say that this is an upgrade from Sean Nua, but maybe in your words, how did you put that?
Well, maybe an upgrade from Sean Nua, but one of the things that concerned me when we did that interview was I think he had said something to the effect of he's not, when he walks into the room, he's not going to, he's not going to light up the room, or he's not going to garner the most attention, or whatever that is. And those are, like, especially when you talk about recruiting, those are the guys that you hope, that's what you want to hear from those guys. Like, when they walk into a room, they command. I gathered that from Steve Klinkscale. I remember when we went to the Ferris State camp, the second he showed up, you could just tell, like, that was a dude, And so I haven't met the guy in person, haven't had a chance to speak with him, but my initial thought was like, I'm not really, I'm on the fence. And on top of that, he's got his work cut out for him, and they're going to have to fill a lot of voids there on the defensive line. So I wouldn't say I have a negative outlook on it. I don't know. I really don't know what to think about it. And to me, I understand the importance of recruiting, and until we see what he brings to the table there, I think the jury will be out.
I've exchanged a few texts with him. He seems like a pretty personable guy. I do remember, Brian Driscoll saying that about him. But the proof will be in the pudding. Do what you do, how it looks and how they end up recruiting, and how he organizes things and their approach when it comes to giving out offers and bringing guys in for official visits. Like, we'll know when we know.
Dude, if he's landing studs on the defensive line, like, I'll love him.
Exactly. But he has been a very, very good developer of talent when it comes to coaching up defensive linemen. Notre Dame consistently put guys in the league, and he's done a really good job there. So, and he's a Michigan guy. He played at Michigan, so he's coming home. He's going to have a little bit more of a passion and a love for his job now. But by all accounts, he's a worker. He's an absolute grinder on the recruiting trail and as a coach. So I think it's a good. I mean, there wasn't one person out there, whether they were covering Notre Dame or covering Michigan, who knew something about Mike Elston that didn't say, like, yeah, that's a good move. That's a good hire for Michigan to go out and land that guy, especially in the midst of Jim Harbaugh being out, on the road looking at NFL jobs and trying to figure out what his next move was going to be. That kind of told me that Elston wanted to be here no matter what. And I think there's value in that too. So there you have it, man. There's the whole staff that Michigan now has assembled. And I believe that George Hilo is the only guy on the staff who's not doing something slightly different from last year. I guess Steve Klinkscale technically, being co-defensive coordinator behind Jesse Minter, and I guess kind of Sharon Moore too, although I expect his role to be quite different, even though he just added – last year he was co-OC, now he's kind of the head OC. It's going to be a lot different without Gaddis there and Sharon kind of being at the top of that totem pole. But, yeah, man, a lot of changes, dude. It's funny when you think about it. I guess they really only hired 2 new people, right? Jesse Minter and Mike Elston. Right. Grant Newsome promoted, a bunch of other guys kind of shifting around and moving around a little bit. But, yeah, there's been a couple good questions in here. Losing Ashawn Larkins and hiring Tom Gamble, who's a longtime NFL personnel guy, the roles that they will play in the recruiting department. I got to say, I wasn't, like, crazy impressed with Courtney Morgan. I know, and we talked about this when Michigan hired him. I know he played at Michigan. He had a really good reputation. I spoke personally to Jim Mora Jr. about him, who coached with him at UCLA, but the dude was out of football for 7 years, dude. If you're elite at your job and you are so good at that, you're not going away from it for 7 years. You're just not. And that's fine that he's at Washington now and that he was at Michigan for a year and he did what he did. I didn't think that was that big of a deal. I really didn't. And Ashawn Larkins, I know even less about what he did. And if that, look, I'm not covering recruiting every single day, day in and day out, like I was before, where I'm constantly talking to these guys and talking to recruits and figuring out who's doing what. So I'm not as informed as I once was, but from the surface and from talking about this with different people a little bit, doesn't feel like that big of losses. And I'm not taking shots at guys once they leave. I hate it when people do that. I just don't think it's that noticeable. I don't think it's going to be that noticeable. And I think the guys that they have in place now will do just as good of a job, if not better. That's just being as open and transparent about it as I can.
Yeah, I agree. And I remember we talked specifically about Courtney Morgan when, the news came that he was going to be filling that role. And I don't know, was it medical sales or he was doing something?
Yeah, something different.
Something out west. And I remember saying, like, ideally you would like to have somebody fill that position that's been kicking ass for the last 7 years at that role instead of doing something else. And so, yeah, I mean, CJ, are they important? I mean, I would hate to say they're not important, but in terms of like the grand scheme, I think it's a position that's easily fillable if somebody chooses to move on.
Yes, Malachi. Ashawn Larkins went to Ole Miss to be an analyst, and I think still do some recruiting stuff with them. So, I look, if he was a big part of recruiting Will Johnson, that's great. That's a layup, dude. Will Johnson's coming to Michigan unless it's completely botched and screwed up. Like, that kid was coming to Michigan no matter what. And if he was involved with Cody Jones, great. That's a good get. Kid out of Tennessee, had some other options. Like, I'm not saying that Courtney Morgan and Ashawn Larkins didn't do anything well or weren't good at something. I'm just thinking, like, what they did wasn't such a big deal and so noticeable that not having them will be felt in a major way. I'm totally confident in Mike Elston's ability as a recruiting coordinator and as a recruiter and the rest of the staff. I don't know that much about Tom Gamble, to be completely honest with you, but he's an NFL guy, has been involved in organizing and getting personnel lined up for years and years. I'd have reason to believe he's going to step in and do a really good job. So there you go. That's what I would say about that. Finishing up with basketball, Chris, we'll do it quickly. Michigan now on a 3-game, over their last 3 games, destroyed Purdue by 24. Then you freaking lose to Ohio State at home, and now they go on the road and they beat Iowa. It's like, damn, dude, get that Ohio State game, and your resume for making the NCAA tournament is so much stronger. And now they've got 6 games left. I think going 3-3 and then winning a game or 2 in the Big Ten tournament would get them in. But they've got some really tough games coming up against Ohio State, against Michigan State, against Iowa again, against Rutgers, who's playing out of their minds right now. Every team that Michigan against Illinois, every team that Michigan is playing is ahead of them in the standings. So they don't have any of the layups. They don't have any Nebraskas. They don't have any Northwesterns. They don't have any Marylands. They don't have any Minnesotas left on the schedule. Every team that they have left, they've lost to, except for Iowa. They play Iowa twice. They just played them at Iowa. They play them in Ann Arbor in about a week and a half. So I'll throw it to you again, Chris. Is this team going to make the tournament?
I don't know that it matters. I mean, I would like to see them make the tournament, but this is not a team. There's too much inconsistency to believe that this team can make a deep run in the tournament. What I'm looking for at this point is they obviously had to go through some growing pains this year. I want to see how they finish, and I want to see what the mental makeup of the team looks like. Obviously, Juwan can be a bit of a hothead sometimes, and you can have some issues on the floor. I just want to see how they finish. If it ultimately leads with them in the tournament, great. If not, fine. But you just want to see growth with this team. And you're right, man. If you could go back and get that Ohio State game, now all of a sudden the resume is looking a lot better. And
God, you're sitting at 15-9. 15-9 sounds so much better than 14-10. It's crazy how that one game makes you feel so different. And that would be 9-5 in the Big Ten as opposed to 8-6. That game, man, if you could go back and get one, that would be the one. And that was a winnable game. They played badly, and it was at home.
So I mean that's do you think it matters if they make the tournament? Is this a team that's going to make a deep run in the tournament? I just don't think there's enough there.
I think there's 2 ways to answer your question. I think it matters so much that they make the tournament. That's an optics thing.
Sure. I'm talking
in terms of winning.
Sure.
No, they're not. They're not going to make the Final Four. They're not going to make a run like they had last year. I just don't think you're going to see that. They're too inconsistent. But I think it's massively important to make the NCAA tournament and finish on a strong note for some of those reasons that you just mentioned. When you're Juwan Howard and you're the coaching staff of this Michigan team, if you cannot impart the urgency and the size of this. Of what that looks like to where your team can't get it together for 6-8 games and make the tournament, I think that goes against everything that we thought Juwan Howard was elite at, which was building a culture and getting his guys to play at their absolute hardest, which is why it's been such a disappointment that the defense is so porous this year. That's an effort thing. I mean, yes, you can scheme some things and you have to know your scouting reports and you have to know what you can do and not do out on the court. But for the most part, like, you can play hard defense if you just want to play hard defense. And they haven't really done that this year, and that's been disappointing. The shooting, you either can shoot it or you can't. And this team just can't shoot it well enough night in and night out. Some nights they get hot, like when they beat Purdue by 24 and you've got Hunter Dickinson. Eli Brooks and Caleb Houston all knocking down 4 threes apiece, and you're shooting at a 60% clip, you're going to win a lot of games like that. But they haven't done that hardly at all this year. And so you've got to get it done in other ways, and they've got to find a way to go at least 3-3 over these next 6 games and win a game or 2 in the Big Ten tournament and hope that they can get. Dude, you got to win 20 games. You've got to win 20 games, and they've only got 14 wins right now. I just think it's going to be really hard to get to a point. Okay, I wrote about this the other night, though. So they've got these hard games left, right? These 6 games against teams ahead of them in the standings. So that's like, damn, that makes it really hard to win any. But on the flip side, if you win those games, they're big resume boosters every time you go out and get a win. That's another quad one win that boosts your resume, that makes you look more impressive than maybe you have been all year. Let's go down the list, Chris, and you tell me what you think is going to happen in these final 6. Are you ready? You tell me.
Ready.
February 20th, so that's in 2 days, at Wisconsin. Wisconsin's number 2 in the Big Ten.
Loss?
That feels like a loss to me. February 23rd, at home against Rutgers.
Win.
That's got to be a win. You have got
to
win that game. And Michigan. Actually, I think Michigan beat Rutgers at Rutgers this year. So no, I'm sorry, they lost. Yeah, so every team that they're playing, they've lost to except for Iowa. February 27th, at home against Illinois.
Got to win it. Yeah, you have to win that one, right? Is that another one of those?
I think that's a loss, dude. I think that's a loss.
Well,
Sleepy
I'm looking at
2 p.m.
See, I've got Illinois. Okay, well, I've got Illinois as a win. I've got Wisconsin as a loss, Rutgers as a win, Illinois as a win. So that's
March 1st, at home, Michigan State.
Loss. So that's 2
days out. 8:30 Tuesday night game. Big rivalry. Got blown out by the Spartans in East Lansing.
Yep.
March 3rd, at home against Iowa. That's senior night. That's a win. And then March 6th to close out the regular season at Ohio State.
Loss.
So in best case scenario, you're giving them a win over a really good Illinois team to go 3-3.
Right. Best case scenario. Yeah.
That makes them 17-13 overall and 11-9 in the Big Ten. That ain't getting in the tournament.
Yeah.
That ain't getting in the tournament. And so
that could easily be significantly worse.
It could be. And easily be worse and unlikely better.
Maybe one game better.
Yeah. That's where I'm
easily
at.
Be 2 or 3 games worse.
That's where I'm at, dude. And I that sucks because I think this team is really talented. And if things click for a couple of games in a row like they did against Purdue, you could make some noise with this team. But I think when they've played 24 games and we've seen what we've seen, you have to lean towards the norm.
It's just like with football, right?
Yeah.
When you're looking at the football program and trying to predict what's going to happen, the best predictor, just look at what has already happened.
So Dwayne, you've got them going 4-2. So you've got them. I just think that's really unlikely. I hope you're right. I want to see this team play in the tournament. I do not want an NIT berth. I just think for momentum for the program and just confidence for these young guys. And like I said, optics from the outside looking in. So you have loss at Wisconsin, win against Rutgers, loss against Illinois, and then winning out at home Michigan State, at home Iowa, at Ohio State. I think that's really unlikely, but man, more power to you, man. If you think that could go down that way, I hope you're right. I hope you are right. But yeah, Chris, Dwayne said he sees him finishing the season on a 3-game winning streak at home against Michigan State, at home against Iowa, at Ohio State. I don't see it.
I mean, it would certainly be impressive and we would love to see it, but based on what they've looked like this year, I think you're probably looking at a couple of letdowns there. And it just, again, I don't know if they're going to make the tournament, but you want to see growth. You want to see them fight. You don't want to see them lay down and get their ass beat in Columbus or somewhere else. You just want to see that they put up a fight and that they've grown over this year.
Michigan man, yes. This is an Xbox gamer headset, Turtle Beach. Thank you.
Look at that guy.
It's the best audio quality that I think out of any headset that we've tried. And Chris, going way back to the beginning when we started this thing up.
For those who have been with us, yeah.
Oh, man, we went back and forth on what headsets we were going to use.
I had the microphone. I had,
dude. We were all over.
I had the microphone like right. It was right by, and I had to get like close. I had to like talk into it real close.
Me and Chris have had discussions. We've talked about, do we, for this next calendar year, this next football season, do we want to get boom mics with an arm where we can actually talk? I don't know, man. I kind of feel like the headset's kind of our thing. I kind of feel like the headsets are our thing a little bit, and they sound good. The quality's good. Hear everything I'm doing in here. And earlier, I think it was also Michigan man who was asking about the glasses. I wear glasses all the time. I take them off for the podcast so there's no glare on my frames, on my lenses. Chris is a new glasses guy. He's trying to headache stuff, and we both just decided to rock them tonight. So there you go, man. Yeah, Malachi, I'm not a big. I don't do Halo. Never have done Halo. I only play sports games. That's it. That's all I've ever really played. I've dabbled a little bit here and there with like Grand Theft Auto. I like the idea of playing Call of Duty, but I'm not very good because I'm not sweaty. Right, Chris? Is that the term?
Sweaty? Oh, yeah. Sweaty. Sweaty means good, according to my son.
Right. The intrigue of playing Fortnite is pretty dope, but again, I don't play it enough to be any good at it, so I just get my ass kicked all the time. But I will put someone out of their misery in NCAA. It will be a bloodbath.
Okay, well, there's going to be plenty of time for us to settle those differences as soon as that game comes out.
I mean,
I'm envisioning you, me, live competitions, bringing fans in, tournaments. Like they need that game needs to come back quickly.
Yeah, I mean, when the new one comes out, that's going to be incredible. NCAA 2014. I don't know if you can see it down there. It's down there. Yeah. Still play that. Haven't played it in a little while, but I will run it up in that, dude. I will run it up. And some of the Maddens, too. Like, I haven't played them that much, but those are about the only things I play. And I actually haven't played in forever. I just don't have the time, dude. With a 2-year-old and the stuff that we try to do on here, and now dabbling into the damn Pistons site, which, good God, they're a bad basketball team. They did somehow beat the Celtics the other night. Can't be Michigan. That's a good question. Can't be Michigan. Who's your team on NCAA? You talk about out of the gate, or like if you're just going to start a franchise or start a dynasty and build it up. I would go with Central Michigan quite a bit. That's my alma mater. Start off with a MAC school, run it up, start winning titles. I mean, that's always fun.
My go-to is always Texas Tech with the air raid offense.
Okay.
Out there in Lubbock on the turf with the all black.
I like the different uniform combinations, bro. I'll go with Oregon sometimes. I'll go with a West Virginia. I'll go with a there's another one that I always used to use that had a bunch of different alternates. West Virginia, Oregon. Maybe it was Texas. Do they have a bunch of alternates? Texas Tech
had a lot of good alternates, yeah.
You got to
State.
You got to go with the uniform combos, something that's going to look good out there. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, going with the Rockets, the Toledo Rockets. Yeah, man, that's what we do, man. That's what we do. We get on NCAA, we do a little Madden. I don't know. Chris, you do some Fortnite with your little guy, right?
A little bit, yeah. He's shown me the ropes. I've gotten a few victory royales in my day.
TCU is a good one, solid. All right, everybody, we'll be back on Monday night after a weekend of, I don't even know, man. A little bit of basketball coming up. We'll continue to monitor Michigan football. We have a very, very, very busy Sunday coming up, and then it's going to be a lot of video editing and getting some content out from what we hope is an outstanding experience with J.J. McCarthy, Andrew Anthony, and Donovan Edwards. We're going to sit down with those dudes and hopefully pump out some of the best shit we've ever done here on the Winged Helmet and Wolverine Digest. So super excited about that. Keep it locked. We'll be back on Monday. Take care, everybody.